Virtual school again. Many of you have made more sacrifices over Christmas, over the holidays, not seeing your friends, not seeing your loved ones. This is not easy. And I know almost half of kids across this country have gotten their vaccine from ages 5 to 12. And there are people who've probably gotten very sick from vaccinations.
We know there is a risk, a very small risk, 1 in 5,000 that may get myocarditis, for example.
We need to get more. So please ask your parents if you can get vaccinated. Getting vaccinated protects yourself, protects your family, protects your grandparents, protects vulnerable people.
Was the Pfizer COVID vaccine tested on stopping the transmission of the virus before it entered the market?
Did we know about stopping immunization before it entered the market? No. We had to really move at the speed of science to really understand what is taking place in the market.
These documents were signed at the beginning of the pandemic, when everybody was desperate for vaccines, when companies were being told to rush vaccine production. Do testing in an unprecedented way, in a way they normally don't do it. So these companies were exposed to way higher liability, putting their products on the market than they normally would, because they didn't do the type of testing that normally takes these drugs years to come to market.
We have heard that Pfizer has now submitted for regulatory approval at Health Canada a pediatric vaccine for kids 5 to 11.
That's why these companies said, if I'm going to deliver you this product that I haven't tested in my normal way, I want to have different conditions.
And there are people who've probably gotten very sick from vaccinations.
We know there is a risk, a very small risk, 1 in 5,000 that may get myocarditis, for example.
But you know what helps lift restrictions? You know what helps move beyond lockdowns? Vaccinations.
Because they didn't do the type of testing that normally takes these drugs years to come to market.
Did we know about stopping immunization before it entered the market? No.
When Canadians get vaccinated, including with our vaccine mandates that ensure the federal public service and anyone getting on planes or trains are vaccinated, that has helped move forward, keep Canadians safe, and most importantly, to keep our frontline health workers who've been heroes during this pandemic from being overwhelmed.
These agreements require employees of the Government of Canada that access these documents to sign confidentiality agreements. And why is that? Why is there much more redactions in these documents than in other documents? These documents were signed when everybody was desperate for vaccines, when companies were being told to rush vaccine production.
Those people are putting us all at risk.
Do testing in an unprecedented way, in a way they normally don't do it.
Those people are
Hi everyone, I'm back and I have no ring light left. I have no microphone that works for my laptop, and our government taxes us so much that I can't really get ahead enough to buy any of those things. So I am coming to you from this iPhone. I would like to thank Viva Fry on Twitter for that amazing video in the intro, because I'm here today to talk to you guys about what has happened to my body since I've gotten the you know what, and I had 2 of them, and I had one in April and then the next one at the end of August. So I'm going to be talking about my experience with that, because I live in Canada and C11 is coming in strong, which essentially means that they're going to be censoring us soon. And I feel like if more people don't talk out about what they've seen during the pandemic or what has happened to them, Justin Trudeau is clearly gaslighting Canadians about the seriousness of this and the fact that it's still being pushed. Actually, in my local paper, it said, don't forget to get vaccinated. So I just wanted to come on here and share my story about my vaccine injury. Now, it will describe some disturbing scenes, and I will give warning before that, so maybe you could skip. And men, just warning you that I will be talking about my menstrual cycle. So I know that that's a weird thing to listen to, and to be honest, I don't want to overshare. a lot, but at the same time, when our government is trying to convince us all that this never happened and that nothing was wrong and that he never made any of us get it, I have had enough. And I am somebody who has a loud voice, and I actually went to school for television and broadcasting because I wanted to be on TV. And 10 years later, I'm kind of in the groove of wanting to do podcasts and my YouTube channel. And what inspired me today was just how much I've seen about this injury and all of the coverage that Rebel News is doing and so much of the National Citizens Inquiry. I wasn't picked to do my testimony, so I will be doing YouTube videos. I encourage you guys to do the same. I'm solely just using an iPhone because I can't get ahead. I cannot I don't know. So give me a like and a follow if you want to, because that ultimately leads me to be able to be monetized, hopefully. But with C11, I highly doubt it. So without further ado, this is my vaccine injury story, and I will be talking about like different parts of the pandemic and how it affected me. But today we're just going to be talking about this injury. So yeah, without further ado, let's do this. So I worked within the school system as an educational assistant. So I was one of the first ones to get option to get this. And they really, really pushed it. And we didn't have an option from the union they just basically said, here's the sign up sheet. Here's what you're going to do. You better go get it. That's the end of it. There was no asking us if we were comfortable with it, especially because I was at a school that was high risk that kept getting shut down. I had actually been in lockdown about 2 times. So that means that I had been stuck in my home for 4 weeks already by the time April had hit. And I had been kind of sick, but I had never had schmovid. They actually made us go test every time we had an outbreak at the schools, so I know I didn't have it, and that really, really hurt. But okay, so we were in like the second round of being able to be eligible to get those, and we signed up, and I remember having to go online, put in my health card, and it was like a race to get a spot to be, you know what, my grandparents on both sides had already been this, so I was a little bit more comfortable knowing that they didn't drop dead. That's funny to say that. And so I trusted it. My dad had gotten it, and I really just wanted to wait. I knew that I was going to be forced to get it with the school board, and they might not have mandated it, but they also made it extremely hard for workers to work with it, right? So you sign up, and then you show up, and you have your health card, and you have your sheet that, you know, says your eligibility and all of your confirmation numbers and stuff. And you get there, and there's hundreds of other people in this mass like complex. Like it's a complex, and you have, which was so ironic that there's so many people, and they pretended that they were safe, like they were like 6 feet apart with their booths and whatever. But when you would go up, you would sign a bunch of things and then move on, and then they'd check who you are again. And I do believe there was 4 stations that you sat at and went over your details, your job, they would ask you, like, are you allergic to this really long word? And you'd be like, well, I hope I'm not. And then they'd laugh, and I'd laugh, but I'd be like, no, really? Like, how do you know I'm not allergic to these things? So I remember after you had to sit in these chairs, and I remember sitting in these chairs after going and being around the most people I'd ever been around in so long. And you had to sit there, and you didn't know anybody, and we were all on lockdown. So it was just wild that we were all allowed to do this, but we weren't allowed to buy sandals for our children. So you wait there, and it's funny because they have got this propaganda screen, and they wouldn't let you tape a single thing. And I was mad because I was like, I want to tape this. I want to prove that I got this, whatever. I wanted to make a TikTok, and I didn't want to make a TikTok in the sense of, I wanted attention. I wanted to make a TikTok just in case I fucking passed out. And I remember being like, well, that's weird that they don't let me tape myself getting vaccinated. You know what I mean? Like, it was such a strange feeling for me to not be able to, tape this, especially because some people were getting it in their cars, which is absolutely wild that we know that, it causes heart. So the fact that they would just let people drive home, it was wild to me. And you wait your 15 minutes and you get up. And I remember just thinking to myself, I remember not wanting to get it at all. I remember thinking to myself, I'm not getting it. Nothing's going in my body. I'm getting a placebo. I'm not getting it. Nothing's going into my body. I'm getting a placebo. Over and over again. I left with a big pamphlet in my hand and I went home. And actually I went out to the car and my husband was freaking out because he had a tick underneath his, and I was like, well, I'm the one that I'm the one that's gonna die. So I ended up getting this because I had seen somebody at my work we had multiple breakouts. We were actually the first school to close because we had so many breakouts, and I had seen a kid that was sick with it, and they had sent their other kid to school, so they were picking up the kid that I was just taking care of. And I decided, probably in that moment, seeing how sick the other child was, that I was like, oh, I really want to get this. If this is safe and effective, I don't want to get that. That looks scary. And it was scary. That was the second time I had to be in lockdown. And by that time I had just been so annoyed with the school system and the lack of the propaganda that they would put out and be like, oh, this is why schools are safe. And I'd be like, no, they're not. And I was still very much in the belief that COVID was going to kill me. That was my headspace, was either this is a bioweapon and they're trying to kill me, or they're trying to kill me with the other thing. You know what I mean? So I kind of believed that was going to kill me. And I had so many instances where I had slipped up and been in contact with people who had it and not gotten it, that I was like, okay, well, I'm a superwoman anyways. So this leads to, I just wanted to kind of talk about why I got it, but I had already talked about it in the first clip of my grandparents getting it and that. So I would say my ultimate decision was thinking that it was safe and effective after my grandparents got it. And I was like, well, those are two genetically, people related to me and they didn't die. Spoiler alert, one of them did. So, yeah, I just wanted to say why I got it. I know a lot of people think I'm stupid, but I also thought I was going to lose my job. So when you're in a place where you're making the most money in your family, and and you think that they're going to mandate this into the point where you don't have a job anymore, I know it seems early to get it done in April, but I knew this was happening, and I wanted those vaccines as far apart as I could possibly humanly get them without. I just was so scared of getting them so close together, even with my own kids and their regular scheduled cycles. I've always had to wait because I've had 2 preemies, and ever since then I've just kind of stuck. I've always been weary of them, even the regular ones, and I just like getting them farther apart. So the first one I got it, like I said, April, and the next one at the end of August. And in between those two shots, I am going to talk about my immediate reaction to even just the first one. So the first one, I was actually super pissed because I had gotten to the thing and they promised us Pfizer, and we showed up and they gave us Moderna. And it was literally, you know how I said there was 4 stations? It was the last station that was like, oh yeah, and by the way, you're getting Moderna. And I was like, what? We were told we were getting Pfizer. Anyways, So after my first Moderna shot, I'm going to talk about what my symptoms were. So warning, this is going to be a little bit graphic in this next part because I'm talking about the changes I saw to my body right from the beginning. So I would say it was more of a slow burn except for my menstrual cycle. So my menstrual cycle was horrendous. Right from the beginning, it came 14 days early. Big clots came out, like golf ball size clots were coming out, soaking through the plus, you know what I mean? And just so painful. Honestly, the best way I could describe it was after you have a baby, you get a very big cycle, and like, I know women take pictures of themselves in their diapers, but essentially that's what you have to do for the first couple of days after birth. But in the week after, you get a bunch of stuff that comes out that had been in there since maybe before the baby, or even, you know, is obviously during. And that is the closest way I could describe it. It was so painful, and it has been painful since then. I deal with sweats. I deal with being nauseous. And at the time dealt with that immediately. I would say that my menstrual cycle and my mind were the first to really, it was something I noticed. That, and I started being completely out of breath. Now, I don't know if that's the mix of having to wear a mask at that time. I had been wearing one for 6 months, I believe so. Now, I don't know if that had to do with that or if it had to do with just whatever was in that thing. And then came the second one. And again, I'm going to warn you that this one is not nice either. So I got my second shot at a Shoppers instead of one of those big, you know, clinics, because it was easier to get. I had waited so long, you guys, like waiting from April till the end of August. Like, that is like, it was like last minute. I got it, I think, a week before they mandated it for you to be able to go places with it. I think I got it right before then. So I had felt just the effects of like my period and the breathing situation, but mostly other than that, I was okay for the most part. And then came the second one, and I'm not going to talk about the thing before it happened because it has to do with my sister, but all I'm going to say is that the universities will pay for what they did to students, is all I'm going to say. And especially because they still make them do it. And so we were there, and I assured her everything was going to be okay. I told her to just tell herself that she wasn't getting it done. And then I got mine, and then she got hers, and I started to feel like I was going to pass out, and I stood up and I fell to the ground. And I was wearing like a really big t-shirt and really short shorts, and like I just remember laying on the floor of the Shoppers. Just at first, obviously, I was like, okay, I'm dying. I had come to my, realization that I was probably gonna die. I had never felt like that before. My heart was racing. It honestly felt like I was having a heart attack. And I fell to the ground, and there was like this teenage boy and his mom there, and they just didn't care. They were like so like rude, and the Shoppers Drug Mart people just stared at me. And my sister was like, get her water. What are you doing? Like, are we gonna call an ambulance? Like, what's going on? I literally, like, I can't even like listen to some of the testimonies people say because it just gets me so overwhelmed, because it freaks me out that happened to me. I have never, ever, I have gotten vaccines. I've been shot, like, after you have babies, they make you take them. And so they dragged me into, like, when you go and there's like that little room where you talk to the pharmacist. Well, they dragged me in there and called my husband. My husband's like, you okay? I'm like, I'm gonna fucking die. And then some things that started happening after that one, which was a Pfizer. And oh yeah, Canada was the only place where they allowed mixing of the vaccines. Did you know that? Did you know that? Did you know that no Moderna or Pfizer suggested that to happen? Yeah, exactly. As if they give a crap about. They literally, I remember seeing like a thing being like, you better take whatever's given to you and you better like it. That was how Canadians were treated about their bodily autonomy. But okay, Trudeau, tell me about how you're more how you are and always will be pro-choice. That's exactly why he's coming out and saying we will always let females have reign over their fertility and blah blah blah. And I'm here to tell you that I don't even think I could have a baby even if I could, like, or even if I wanted to, because of the thing. So anyways, after that second one, that's when things started to really go downhill, because obviously I had the stress of, after getting that second one, I got a phone call from my grandma telling me that she had cancer. She was double vaccinated, but God forbid they let her have chemo treatments, right? Like, oh, thank God my grandma was vaccinated, you guys. Woohoo. One of the only things my grandma and I ever argued about in our entire lives was the fact that I didn't want her to get vaccinated. Now, I don't know if that triggered her cancer or not, but the fact that she couldn't get her chemo because of the lockdowns is a huge reason why I am here talking to you guys. Because she was 69 and she was taking care of all three of my kids before she got cancer, and she should be here right now. So her parents lived, my grandpa died in 2020. Her dad, my great grandpa, died in 2020. My grandma died of cancer in 2021. His daughter. Anyways, so around the time, and like I said, I am not naive to think that a lot of this is stress on my body as well, because losing her was the hardest thing I've ever had to go through. And it's just like being tortured. Watching a loved one die and not being able to do anything about it is pure torture. Hold on. I don't want to cry this video, but that is around the time when I started noticing extremely weird things around my butt. And there had been quite a few times since the first one that I noticed a slow burn of, not like down there, but like all of these complications started to arise. Like, I was vegan and I went from being able to eat raw vegetables to being allergic to raw vegetables within that 6 to 7 months in between those two things. And then it was more of a slow burn. And then right around my grandma dying, I had an abscess in my, I didn't even think I didn't even know it was that. I had no idea. I was just in so much pain that I went to the hospital and I had to get surgery right then and there. And that's when they were like, okay, you need a colonoscopy. And I was like, yeah, I know I need a colonoscopy. So we took one, and one of the doctors in St. Thomas said that he didn't see a thing there, and then he doesn't know what to tell me, and then gaslit me the whole time. And then when my home doctor saw it, he was like, yeah, there's Crohn's right here, and showed me where he's seen it on the scan. So I'm sitting here still without a doctor now because I moved and have no idea. And I've just been listening to Reddit, and I have been looking up, reading books and stuff about Crohn's and how to cure it and how to keep it at bay, because things just got progressively worse until around February 2022. And I had been in support of the Freedom Convoy, and obviously because my grandma was affected by the lockdowns to the point where she died, and at the time I had no idea that like that they were linked to cancer or anything. I had no idea. So I was just mad about the lockdowns. But then in February, I got COVID. I had to re-record my video. But after I got COVID, the symptoms for me got so bad. Whether it was probably the fact that I had 3 rounds of COVID put into me, the fact that I had been wearing masks and then was forced to continue to wear masks, and I ended up having a blood clot in my lungs. I ended up in the hospital. I had hives all over me. I had a pretty terrible reaction to actually getting COVID. And obviously, like I said, I think that it's because my body couldn't handle having COVID 3 times. And I just think that, if someone promises you that you're not going to get something, I should be able to sue. I can't believe that this government told me that I would stay out of the hospital. I'm doing this for my grandma. And, life got really bad for me to the point where I could no longer work. How are you supposed to stay at a job when you're just constantly sick? I was so sick for over 6 weeks. I would go to work, cough, they'd send me home for 5 days. And then obviously things started to change. But by the time things started to change, they were even more reluctant to give people time off. So I ended up quitting my job and we moved 7 hours north because I was just done with all of the southern jobs not paying enough. Us just constantly working for nothing. We had a house that was too small, so we moved 7 hours north, in northern Ontario, and it was all because I am so vaccine injured that my day-to-day life is extremely hard when I'm working, especially within the high-risk job that I was in. I worked in the most dangerous job in Ontario, being an educational assistant, most violent job. And I was attacked on the daily and weekly, I guess. I don't think people really know how bad schools have gotten, but because I got vaccinated, I could no longer breathe properly. I had to sit back in my seat in my van instead of sitting up. I passed out. I almost died again. I can't remember if I mentioned this, but at Shoppers, I was going to get my puffer after we figured out what was going on with me, and I almost died again. I passed out, and it's just these things have never happened to me. I've had to accept death 2 times in my life, and I have never thought I was going to die like that. I thought I was a goner. I literally started just saying okay, well, I guess I'm gonna go. I guess my husband's gonna be a single dad. You better not get with anybody. So yeah, that was what had happened to me after COVID, and then I'll go back into the other clip that I had previously taped. My washer sounds like a monster. So Trudeau, what I want to say to you is that you can sit there with your smug look on your face, I'm listening to clearly somebody in this telling me what to say, and in between I'm going to say, You can sit there with a smug, stupid look on your face, but you're not going to change our memories. You're not going to sit there and say, we didn't make you get a vaccine when you clearly did make us get a vaccine. You do not understand the Hippocratic oath that counselors, nurses, and doctors have to take. You have no idea what that means, what informed consent means. What's a code of ethics, Trudeau? Because you're certainly not following any. And I would just like to wonder who you think you are sitting here saying that you never made any of us get vaccinated. Well, I remember the first night that I found out about this pandemic and that we were going to be in our houses for 2 weeks. And I bawled my eyes out because I knew that they were going to push a vaccine. I knew it because I had read books. I had read history books. Something. They were going to do something. And you did. You locked us in our house for 3 years, and then you expect people to be okay. You don't provide any extra mental health services like you and the NDP say you're going to do. You can't just have bail. Like, you can't just do bail reform without mental health services. The idea would be that they would spend time in a facility, not back out on the streets to reoffend. I have no idea who the Liberals, specifically Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh, think that they are, but Canadians have had enough. People like me have had enough. Mothers who know that they will never be able to go back to the era where we send our kids when they're 18 to Toronto to go shopping for the first time because we'll be too afraid because of the literal violence because of your stupid bail reform laws. Is this the future that you want for your children in Canada? What are the best parts of freedom in Canada? I'm going to tell you right now what mine are. Mine was getting my license at 19 after going through a really rough, or 18, after going through a really rough teenagehood. I felt freedom for the first time. I was able to go to Wonderland all the time. I was able to go to Toronto, and I remember never being scared. I went to MTV Live. I lived my life. And my kids will not have that same life, because even if you go to White Oaks, last time I was at White Oaks, someone was throwing bricks at cars. This is not the Canada that I knew growing up in. And I am not going to let Justin Trudeau sit there and tell us that, I'm sure people got sick from the vaccine. Yeah, we did. We did. I did. Did you? I want to know in the comments, did you get injured from this? Did you believe the government when they said that everything was safe and effective? Does it piss you off now because you're like me and you can't work? Canadians have had enough. I've had enough. How about you? If you've had enough, join me on Parliament Hill on Mother's Day and the day after on the Monday for a protest. I'm raising money. If anybody even watches this, I will put the GoFundMe in the bio, but obviously my stuff hasn't been pushed out since the 11th. That's just what it is.
You get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
These vaccines are highly, highly effective.
Vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick.
They're really, really good against variants.
Everyone who takes the vaccine is not just protecting themselves, but reducing their transmission to other people and allowing society to get back to normal.
Get your first shot, and when you're due for your second, get your second shot.
Our key goal is to stop the transmission, to get the immunity levels up so that you get almost no infection going on whatsoever.
When people are vaccinated, they can feel safe that they are not going to get infected.
If you're vaccinated, you're not going to be hospitalized, you're not going to be in an ICU unit, and you're not going to die.
Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe to keep up with our continuous censorship in Canada. And remember, everybody, my stomach hurts and I hate the government. Thanks for listening.